Hello. Hang on, check the audio. Okay, cool. Stuff's broken. My touch portal app isn't working and it's got all my buttons in it, which is why I don't get the applause that I need in order to motivate myself to get started. I need praise. Anyway, rocking the artificial lights today. I've had a go. We're almost there. We're almost there. Okay. Goodness me, camera settings. It's amazing how position of the light, amount of the light, how much diffusion's on the light, and then you've got the settings on the camera. You've got the fucking dynamic range setting. You've got the ISO. You've got the exposure. You've got, and it's like, okay, so and then you change any one of those settings, and everything goes to shit. So hopefully it's okay. But anyway, position of the camera as well is like, okay, how can I make myself look 100 years old? Just touch a button. it's great. But then anyway, so fucking with Touch Portal, we're almost at the point where I can just turn it on and just start streaming at this time of day with this amount of light. At least I worry about all the wrong things. Seriously. Anyway, hi. So a little bit. I've seen this coming up, and I think it's something that I've been wanting to, actually I reserved it for, more than one chapter in the book that I was writing was writing, chipping away at, okay, until Amazon deal with their AI problem. I don't know where to put a book unless it's with a publisher. But anyway, if you know anyone, hook me up. I've got sample chapters ready to go. So anyway, it's, in the book, talking about this. I hate these. Oh my God, I hate these fucking. Oh, hang on. Before I start, I need to say this. If you are watching on LinkedIn and commenting, it's 50-50 on whether the chats come through. Okay. And also, I did notice that someone wrote like a massive long comment I'm not going to read that on a chat. I'm just going to turn that off because it's too distracting. I can't engage in real time on long chats. Banter and little questions and stuff, yes, but I have ADHD, so I do try to concentrate. Okay, so hammering the chat and long chats and stuff, I'm just going to like ignore it. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to get to the point, because you've got to balance between the people who are watching on a replay getting frustrated because someone's like, constantly hammering the chat, and also delivering the message that you want to deliver, and also making it so that things are, so that you're participating, that sort of stuff. So LinkedIn, 50-50 chance on whether chats will come through. Okay. X, 50-50 chance on whether chats will come through. Facebook, 50-50 chance. I don't know why. It's just something where I don't know whether, it's not a setting or anything. It just seems to be a lottery on whether it comes through on Restream. The only one that definitely works, that I know works, is the YouTube chat. So if you really, really desperately want to, say something to me on chat, by all means, do it on YouTube and I will see it. Otherwise, I'll just, again, it's like, I've said this before, it's like driving 8 cars at once. And especially when it's school holidays and new setup and things aren't working, it's like, okay, there's a limit to how much my brain can hold in any given moment. I'm pretty smart and I can hold a lot, but there's a limit for everyone, okay? So anyway, so I don't know if anyone's ever watched like Hassan Piker or anyone like that, right? That's a superhuman like strength. That's like an ability to process all of that information at once and do that. They make it look easier than it is. They're incredibly rare. But for people who aren't, I'm also older, but also people who aren't trained in specific things like, media skills, media training, those sorts of things. It's harder to do than it looks. So anyway, that's a bit of housekeeping. The book that I was writing, I dedicate quite a bit of time to this, and it's a big part of my story because I've got a lot to talk about with that. There was a sort of pre-2010 internet, okay, where at some point something flipped, where the incentives flipped, where the internet went mainstream, where influencers became mainstream. Hang on, let me turn my chats on. Thank you. I turned them off last time because I was in a bit of a mood, and I'm like, anyone who's been around for any length of time with me knows that if I'm in a mood, the chats piss me off. And it's like, it's nothing personal. Don't take it personal. And I think you'll understand if you kind of watch more of my content, a word I hate. If you watch more of me and get to know me, you'll understand that I have this contradictory love-hate relationship with all of these things, okay? So I also struggle with ADHD, being a little bit rigid in my thinking. I'm a human being too, and I'm putting myself out there. I don't want to do it. I feel like I've been dragged kicking and streaming. There's the name of that's a good name for the book. Kicking and screaming into this sort of thing, and I enjoy it. But I'm saying it's not my. I do it as a just to prove that I can to myself, but also prove to others that anyone can. Because if I can do streaming and that sort of stuff, anyone can. Okay, I'm not born for the stage. Let's put it that way. And I don't have the disposition or personality to sit there and just go, ooh, ice cream, lick, that shit. Remember that? That was fucking feels like years ago. It was only a few months. Anyway, but I do have this love-hate relationship with the internet. It does actually dovetails into the topic of the video, okay, which was that I do have this wealth of experience and a lot of stories, and a lot of it is through my own personal experience with the internet. And it's not because I think I'm somebody, okay? I don't think I'm anybody. The point of why I do this experiment called, Taylor, whatever this thing is, right? Whatever this is. I'm an ordinary person. It's the fact that I am ordinary and I am nobody special. And yet I have the access, I have the ability to experience these things. And one of those things that I know very, very well and have lived through, and is this, I hate these fucking words. This is a LinkedIn word, but it's just, again, you got sharenting, okay? People oversharing online, especially like young kids, this trend towards embarrassing your kids online. That didn't come from nowhere. I lived through that. And there is this funny thing where I'm watching people who would be considered more influential than me, right? Whatever that means. Okay. And a lot of that stuff is a conscious decision on my part to not participate in certain things in order to build that influence. Okay. So this is a conscious decision. I get frustrated that my reach is cut off because for obvious reasons that, you want to be able to exist in a certain space, a healthy space where you can reach an audience, right? That's the frustrating part. I don't want to be, I have experienced, I've gone viral. I've gone viral while having young children. And I have a lot of experience because I was actually a mummy blogger. Okay. So a big part of but I was a pre-2010 mummy blogger. Now, I have 3 kids, right? So you might not know that. Like, you might not know unless you're sort of across the whole history of Taya. I actually have 3 children. My youngest child is 2000 and was born in 2009. Okay. My eldest was born in 2001 on 9/11, the day after, on September 10th. At 11:55. So she missed out by 5 minutes, okay, and a time zone. But I spent the morning of September 11th, right, doped out of my fucking head, having a baby with jaundice, and I'd just gone through a really emergency C-section, all that sort of stuff, right? And she was born in a perfect storm where America lost its mind online, mummy groups lost their minds, and I can, and I've got a middle child as well who was born in 2005. So you'll notice that if you go back through my blog archives, a lot of it's been scrubbed, and I probably might start scrubbing more in the context of AI. And I'll get to that too. But I lived through all of this. I got a little bit of notoriety and fame in the pre-2010 internet. Okay, mummy blogger, and unless you were there, I think a lot of I think millennials should know better, and Zoomers should definitely know better, because we did not know that people were reading our stuff. We did not know that this would happen, and it was only when sort of Deuce. There was a woman called Heather Armstrong, Deuce.com. Okay, she was one of those first people to have, if you've read my blog post, asterisk, I think it is. I think I talk about this a little bit, where she was one of those first mummy bloggers who would just blog about her life and write about her baby and all that sort of stuff. And everyone followed. They loved her. Okay, everyone read her stuff. It was funny. It was relatable. It was that everyone wanted to be Deuce, right? Any young mum laughed at all of this stuff, but it was very niche. She built an audience, but it was just kind of something that existed in a vacuum outside of the real world. And what happened with Heather was that she was one of the very first bloggers to have the real world collide and with her website. And she got fired because she'd been sitting there bitching about her colleagues and all that sort of stuff, right? So that was how her sort of rise to fame. But she eventually she was one of those very first really big mummy blogger brand powerhouses, okay? This was before like Mia Friedman and those people glommed onto it. This was like years before that, okay? I think there was a good 5 years before people like Mia Friedman sort of glommed onto this stuff, right? And I was part of that. And I'd get quite a bit of traffic. But what I figured out early on, and it wasn't even conscious, it was just my disposition, my personality, right? I never really got along with the mums and mums group. So when you have a baby in Australia here, you have to sort of go to the child health nurse, and they recommend a group, a local group where other mothers who just had a baby can sort of hang out and socialize, right? I never got along with those people, right? But first of all, most of them were older than me. Like I had my first child when I was 22. Most of them were in their 30s. I had nothing in common with most of these people, right? Again, I probably had a bit of an attitude problem too. And again, that's just, part of being in your early 20s. But I had my first daughter quite young. And, well, that was quite old for my family, but young for everyone else. And I didn't know any different. But so basically we're forced to socialize. But I used to hate that shit, okay? Because it was just like I've never been very good at small talk. And I was never really that interested in the baby stuff, okay? And I sort of positioned myself. Again, it wasn't a conscious thing. It was mimicry, right? There's this thing, and this is where the memetics of this is really interesting over time, because I was there when people started blogs on Blogspot. And before Blogspot, you had sort of manual HTML websites. I've done all of that stuff, okay? And I observed this sort of trend and wrote it a little bit of being sort of an anti-mum. Okay, sort of an anti-mum, snarky kind of, I love my kid and she was the center of my universe. It was the main thing happening to me because I had that uni and, nothing really all that interesting going on in my life. So I would sort of mimic some of those mummy bloggers that were a bit snarky and funny, but it was contained. It was somewhat of a contained experience. Like even when I would love to talk to Heather at some point, actually, like now with the benefit of hindsight. We didn't know. We just uploaded things to a server that people may or may not have discovered. It was always sort of contained, not even to our friends and family. Like my family never read my shit until later, until they got online and on Facebook. It was something that was just a few people who were like-minded. You and your online friends were sort of in on the joke. Most importantly, in on the joke, there was an understanding that this was sort of an exaggeration or hyperbole or a creative exercise. It wasn't literally our life. And so Mummy Snark became its own little niche, okay? But then it became an empire, and, I watched that with Heather. Like if you were around and saw the Deuce.com days and saw her progression, there was a point where she would write about her daughter, Lita, okay? And I often think of her, and I imagine she's probably leading a quiet life now. But there was a point when she was like, you feel like you know these kids. You felt like you knew these kids, okay? And even today, like there's kids that you've seen across the world who've grown up, and they feel like you feel like a weird auntie when they're like, you've got to remember that. I'm sure everyone's had this moment where, you're hanging out with somebody and they bring their kid and you're like, oh my gosh, you feel like you know that kid. And the kid kind of recoils and goes, I don't know who the fuck you are. Who the fuck are you? And you're acting weird and creepy. Like I'm sure that a lot of people have accidentally have done that. If you've been online for any length of time and met anyone with kids, that interaction is a fairly common thing where you're more excited to see the kid than the kid is to see you, and they don't know who the fuck you are. And, you kind of, it slaps you in the face. If you're a self-aware person, it slaps you in the face and you go, oh shit, that's all parasocial shit. Okay. But so I experienced this stuff. I built quite a large audience for the time. It wouldn't be considered millions today. My influence is contained very small, even though people would think I don't have any influence. It's like, okay, well, what do you need to do to get influence? Okay, share pictures of your whole life and confess everything and whatever. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that because I went through these things and I stopped. Okay, so it's like, okay. So anyway, and I deleted my accounts and I started over. And I only share what I feel that is either already out there or, I do retain some degree of privacy now. Okay, so that's I still try to do my job and try to do these things, but I do have healthy boundaries around this stuff. So anyway, so you watched Heather Armstrong, and she suddenly, obviously, once she got cancelled, one of those early cancels, she got the there was this whole. I just remember the Blog Her Network and a few other like early MCNs, like those content networks that where they pair up and they organize as a group to sell advertising as part of a blog network, right? So you put their ads, advertisers would buy ads on the websites and they would distribute it through that network of ads. And Heather was instrumental in that. And she got sort of deals with HGTV. She got, all of that sort of lifestyle stuff. And then obviously people wanted what she had, like, because she was actually quite funny. She was one thing about Heather that was really, really interesting was her talking about her postnatal depression and her relationship with things like Mormonism, like having grown up as a Mormon, and sort of rejecting that and all of that, going through all that stuff. It was deeply personal stuff. Okay. And part of that postnatal depression was talking about Leda and her letters to her daughter, which were absolutely amazing and beautiful and funny and all of those sorts of things. But at no point, because we hadn't navigated it, we hadn't thought about it really yet, because our own privacy wasn't really a consideration. And that's the thing that I think, with pre-2020, I keep doing it, I don't know, pre-2010 blogging, privacy was really not a consideration for people because the audiences were not, the audience was in on the joke. The audience was heavily curated. You'd occasionally get some, bad faith like community come in and crash your blog or whatever. I had that happen, several times. And, the breastfeeding activists would come in and crash your fucking posts and harass you and bully you and shit. Yes, I've seen it all before, dickheads. Women are bullies too, and they're the worst cyber bullies, and I've experienced all of it. That's why I'm immune to most of these. This Twitter bot harassment shit, that's like low-hanging fruit. It doesn't even affect me. It's just noise. I've had so much fucking terror in my life over like the internet over the years. It's like I'm bulletproof. What else have you got? But anyway, so it's pretty funny to see this. But so the Gen X mummy blogger is a very different breed to sort of the millennial and Zoomer blogger, because those worked in an environment where there was an incentive for money. It wasn't monetized. It wasn't something where you could be an influencer, okay, off the back of your writing and kids and blogging. You just blogged. You just told stories, okay? Now, idiots like me did it under their real name, okay? And I have had to, I never saw any reason to use a pseudonym. It was just whatever. I'm nobody. I'm not anybody. I was like, that was always my position. If they're going to come after me, like I can't see how. Things would have to be very, very, very bad and dystopian if they were going to come after someone like me. And I was going to, if it was going to be a problem with my real name, we've got bigger problems. That was what I thought. Interesting. I'm very clever, but I was naive. Anyway, but we weren't really thinking about that stuff. It was all stuff that existed in the abstract. So most of us were blogging, and then it became a lucrative business idea. Now, that's where the flip happened. The switch happened when advertisers and branded content, became a thing. And mummy bloggers were the be-all and end-all of that. Now, a big part of, this was something that I felt a bit squeamish. There are a couple of events that I felt squeamish over, and I'll write about more of this, in a more succinct and better way, right? There is a deliberate, you may notice that I don't talk about my kids much anymore. When I do, I talk about them in sort of vague terms. When I don't share pictures without their consent, there's all these things that I actually do now because, for a reason, because I have pissed off my kids. They're upset with me for that stuff. My youngest don't give a shit. But, they were, my daughter in particular, because she was the first one. She was the practice. She was the one that I, thought I would write about her funny stuff and film her. And she would do very cute, very funny videos. And I recorded it. And I didn't really even think, because it wasn't for a general audience. It was for a handful of people. And social media, Flickr, those things were tool. No one was, the thing about, okay, let me clarify that. The thing that changed was that nobody was visiting your shit unless you gave them the link, unless you specifically. So there was some degree of gatekeeping with the old internet before social media that unless you explicitly posted that link on, say, somewhere else, okay, people would not be able to really discover it, or it wouldn't be presented to them without your involvement, really, okay? Unless somehow, you had people were sharing it via email, or, like I said, people were brigading in a forum against you for whatever reason. For the most part, when you did this stuff, there was an implied consent that went with, here's the link, I want you people in this community to look at the link. It was very different, okay? So Tetris Toe said, the impression I had of blogging as a millennial kid was that it was simply an online journal. Nothing inherently special, just a space for diligent writers. And that is exactly what it started out as. And there are still, that's always what it's been for me, but I've had to pivot. That's why you'll see my website where I'm just kind of, I have always had, I've been a prolific writer, but a lot of it I find very difficult to put stuff out in public these days because I've learned the hard way. It's not because I'm not producing. It's because I'm severely conscious of what I put out there. And when I put it out there, that everything can go viral. I've gone viral. I know what it's like. It is embarrassing. And I'll get to that too, right? And so it's like, I do find it funny though with Zoomers and people who are like, well, you don't have any influence. How many clicks do you have? I'm like, well, I don't want that. I want a sustainable audience. I want to get back to the thing, like I said, when I share a link, the people who are following me can see the link that I shared and they can go visit that. That's what the deal was. I want my audience that I choose to drive traffic to not be you get what I'm saying? It's not about fame. I don't give a shit. Those people are annoying, okay? But there's people who seem to think that influence begins and ends with your Twitter account. It's funny. Like this got that. It's like, this is the whole theme of everything that I've been talking about since I started this channel, which is that stuff is so easily like manufactured and astroturfed to shit. You're not, anyway, it's so funny. I saw this morning, just to digress a little bit. It is funny, like this Twitter brain thing where someone, and I like this person's content generally, okay? They're a chef. And he said something like, what has Amal Clooney done? She's a human rights lawyer. And she hasn't said anything about Palestine. And I'm like, she was literally on the panel that initiated the criminal proceedings in the ICC. And it is fucking hilarious because it's like, oh, okay, so it's literally the only job she did, the only job that anyone can possibly at all do in this whole world. But because she didn't tweet about it 8 times a day, she's not doing anything. And I go, this is social media. This is the mindset that people are broken, where they confuse this stuff, this largely artificial stuff, with influence, first of all. And they won't learn from anybody like me who's been through that and actively don't seek fame and influence. They just cannot understand that people would not want to be famous, that people would not want to share their stories of their kids. But some of us have just have lived through that and seen the consequences. So anyway, let me get to my point. So the digital landscape today is far more turbulent. It is, and it is also like if I was potentially, I've never ever in a million years thought to go viral, okay? If I'm shit posting something, it's usually because I'm trying to confuse the algorithm and confuse things and play with things. It's not because I'm trying to get attention. If you want to get attention, get your tits out. Who gives a shit? Like, it's easy to get attention. And my account's so limited, it doesn't matter anyway what I say. So that's how I know it's limited, because I know how to do that shit. But anyway. But it's really fascinating. It does come back to the children online thing. which was that basically, yeah, people did just set up an online journal. It was just writing. And what I would do is experiment with that writing, experiment with tone of voice. So obviously you'll see that evolution, because I had several websites. I had Contempt for Humanity, which was sort of more of a ranty site about like just, snark kind of thing. That was a big thing in those days, was sort of that snark voice. Okay, so I was a pretty good comedy writer in that regard. I would do, satirical snark that was always larger than life persona. It was never me. I found a lot of, and this is some of the dying by the sword stuff from the book that I talked about, which is that I found it's been a very weird journey for me over the last 30 years, because I used the internet as somewhat of a sort of head in a jar sandbox where I could experiment with identity and all of that sort of stuff, and my tone of voice and sort of, I was just in my own head experimenting and writing, and it was a creative exercise. And if you came along for the ride, then that's fine too. Like, I'm pleased to see you. Welcome. Hi. Cool. And over time I built an audience, and I would get clients from it, and, I was persuasive, all that sort of stuff. And then that all just came back on me like just a tsunami of bullshit where, it's just, that's the theme of the book. But when it comes back to the child thing, the mummy blogging scene was that what you were trying to do was that you were trying to one up the other mums. So it wasn't so much about the kid. You were using the kids as tools, but the motivation wasn't necessarily about being famous or turning it into money, or that's why you see the most airheaded narcissistic influencers. They're just only focused on sort of money. But the original goal of a lot of mummy bloggers was not money. It wasn't. Because there was no money in it. It was your website, and people did that, and there was no money in it. Okay, started putting ads, and people sort of, and you've watched that drift happen. But obviously her marriage ultimately ended. Again, we don't know why, but like these things, the people have been through these things, who purposely don't have much influence now because they're not on TikTok with 1 million views and might have something to say. Like, don't do that, because your kids will hate you and potentially sue you. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So, because they got a good case for it, especially with the way that the law's going. It's heading that way, okay? You could argue that there's an argument under copyright law right now, okay? The UN Rights of the Child acknowledges this right of children, okay? France does. It's coming. It's coming. So anyway, that's where it's going, in case you needed a map of the fucking meandering. So anyway, but it was the main. So a lot of the mummy blogging scene, if I gather around the campfire, children. But what you would do is, when you were first pregnant, you'd go and you'd join like an online community. Okay, so you'd join you had it was Google groups, then it was Yahoo groups, and then it was Google groups, and Google bought Yahoo groups, and it was all of that sort of stuff. But they did start out as email lists. So this is how old I am. All of my online communities were email lists, and so I joined and so Yahoo would have these groups, and my memory is, I need to look this up whether it was Yahoo. Or I think something else. It was you had the Major Domo list, but then you had Yahoo, but there was something in between that sold to Yahoo, but then Yahoo sold to Google. That was the groups part. Okay. So you knew better. So, okay, the landscape wasn't more turbulent. Actually, to address what Tetris Toast said, it wasn't more turbulent. We intuitively knew that putting baby photos on Usenet was a bad idea. Okay, so the internet you had specific and clear use case, you had a specific use case for a specific platform. So Usenet was full of trolls. It was going to go worldwide. It was like the kind of thing that, it'd be absolutely insane to put it on your you put your kids' stuff on there, your kids' stories or whatever, right? Usenet was the broader decentralized internet, okay? Then you had IRC chat, so they were more like chat rooms, okay? Now, that was sort of that early days of, like, if you think of IRC, think of like Slack, Telegram. They've basically just tried to mimic what IRC is now, right? Angel Fire was a website thing. So you had GeoCities and Angel Fire where you could do, like an ad-supported website. But I'm talking about the email group lists. So the way that, I landed on a September 2001 babies email list. And I think it was through Yahoo. So when you're pregnant, right, this is what happens. You find out you're pregnant. You're 21 years old, or 20, whatever the fuck I was, okay, 20-something years old, okay. And you go on babycenter.com and you learn about pregnancy symptoms and what am I pregnant, all that stuff. And then you go, oh, they've got a forum. Okay. And then you start sort of looking and you sort of land on a community. And I think it was Yahoo, but don't quote me on that. I didn't plan to go into detail on this. But so what that was an email list where anyone who was pregnant September 2001 could sign up to that, and it was an email discussion group. So it was mostly done via email. The level of trust. See, this is something that if you tell a Zoomer that, you go, that would be filled with fucking kink and fetishists and weirdos and all that. It's like the level of trust that we had. Okay, so there was an illusion of intimacy. So what it was there was an illusion of security and intimacy because we hadn't even considered that people would be interested in it. It was an email newsletter. It was an email group. You replied, and you got replied, and people would have discussion threads and stuff, and it was all done mostly via email. Okay, and if you think about the date of my email list, you can see what fucking happened. What went down? It went down good. But you also would have, so this was one thing. So I was on the September 2001 and it was open to Americans and so there was this, American, I was like one Australian, I think there was like 2 Australians, 2 Canadians, and the rest were all Americans, right? Some of them Midwest, some of them sort of more, but I got into this whole, so, and I am going somewhere with this, which was that a lot of that early stuff with the email list is that I learned some of these to navigate some of these little cultural differences and how to bait and how to goad and how to piss off the Americans, the stay at home, these fucking trad wife things. They've been around forever. It's just that they've always been there in America. I've been baiting those fucks since like forever on the internet. Okay. They've always been there. The 9/11 loonies, always been there. Conspiracy theorists, always been there. Nazis, KKK, always been there, okay? I used to wander in and you'd be 3 clicks away from Nazi shit all the time, okay? So anyway, you just need to know that, okay? What social media did was make it more discoverable, make it more mainstream, and also create a bubble that was a self-affirming thing where the more you engage with it, the more you've received, and that was the problem. The problem is algorithms. Content's always fucking been there. Okay, so anyway, but so this September 2001 babies list, it had mostly Americans, but it was a mix of, a mix of Americans. We make fun of Americans, but I want to acknowledge that America is diverse, has a very, as fun as it is to generalize, but I got to know people who were, I got to learn about America through that stuff, right? But one thing that we particularly used to do, me and my friend Kelly, and I lost touch with Kelly, and I don't know if she was, but again, there's always that question because I never knew who she actually was. So she could have been anyone. But I'm saying, like, you would have these email conversations, but then you'd sort of branch off into side conversations. And this was a big part of our, like, fun and amusement and stuff was sort of trolling the conservative American SAHM, remember, stay-at-home mum, SAHMs, and the Lalesh League fucking groupies and all of those, like, breastfeeding activists online. They were so, and the natural parent, like the attachment parents and that sort of stuff. And like, they're the people that are just, like, too into it. Like, they're a little too into it. there were all these like people that were like, oh, my birth was so natural that I had an orgasm during it and all this. And people, obviously, everyone is exaggerating their life. Okay, you got to understand that everyone was bored. They had babies. Babies are pretty much the same experience for everyone, regardless of how special you think your kid is. You're tired. They're not special. You're not special. But, we kind of created this thing, these, the wars around like diaper warmers and, like all of this pram choice, formula versus breast, all of this stuff that would break out in parenting forums. So you had these email lists. So this email list was a microcosm for me very early on. And a big part of identity is knowing who you are not and who your enemies are. And so what enemy? But you know what I mean? Like me and my handful of friends we created a bonding thing around making fun of these people, okay? Who's the bully here? I was a victim. We were all both victim and bully. Let's be honest. Okay, so it's relative, right? When you think back, you go, if you're self-aware, you go, everyone's a little bit the bully and a little bit the bullied, okay? And it's like, it's just how it is. So anyway, but it does, you got to understand about this. I'm telling this story for a reason. And also AI will summarize the stream. So I've got some notes so I can remember, so I can put it in the book. And so again, it's just notes. I won't have AI write it, but I'm saying, but it's just, so, because sometimes memories, as you're talking, they come up and you forget and you go, oh, okay. But this list was a microcosm. So what you would do is you'd have those email lists. So those email lists, just through my experience, what I think sort of how we got here. So you had these email lists. And so there's that sort of clash of cultures. And early on, 2001, when 9/11 happened, that fucking group went ballistic. And it was funny. And I've talked about this, I think, before, where I was all of 22, and I was a political science graduate. I was just graduating. I was third year political science. I knew what was up. had been writing my dissertation about America and the American political system. So I thought, hey, I'm going to put my opinion on there. I don't think that should have been, I think I should have done that. Anyway, in retrospect, that was not wise or terribly empathetic because people were afraid, okay? So anyway, so shit went down on that group then. So I knew, sort of earlier, I kind of knew how to navigate and troll. Like you can't troll an old, I've been a troll since the fucking beginning. I know how to troll shit. I know when I'm being trolled. So anyway, so you had that, but then you had those email lists were kind of that thing where people would attach images and share with like strangers. And in retrospect, you go, that's reckless. You shouldn't have done that. Because that archive now exists on Google Groups, I believe. I don't know if it's still there, but I know that it'd be on the archive. Your emails, okay? So when you were posting to that list, okay, your emails aren't being archived in the background as a searchable database, right? Same thing with Usenet, okay? So basically what happened was with those groups became what you thought was private, like private, again, it's naive in retrospect, but, private, were archived alongside Usenet. So even those like me who went, well, you wouldn't ever put your shit on fucking news groups. What idiot would do that? There's remember the Cotsy trolls. There's Cotsy trolls. There's fucking everything there. Okay. I just went everything with my name. You search my name on like Usenet, probably comes up. I don't know if it's there, but it's pretty funny and cringe. But I also knew early on and intuited early on that, this was this space, this email space, an intimate space for pregnant mums who are pregnant at the same time around the world to come together, talk about motherhood, have shit fights, all that sort of stuff, be a bit of a cunt, whatever, okay? But that's separate from Usenet. Usenet is public. Usenet is huge. And then you had internet forums, okay? So over here you had the internet forums. So I used to get banned from them a lot because I'd just again, not overtly do anything, but I was just a shit stirrer. So it's like, you can't give me a forum full of like crazy pregnant people and me not stir the pot. It's just not going to happen. So what, and again, I think that what happened was early over the years, you position yourself as someone who's just trying to make fun of the people who take themselves too seriously and take this stuff too seriously. And you can take it a bit too far. So anyway, so I mean, I've got, those days, fuck me. But anyway, it's so safe in the niche. There was this, and it's an illusion. It is all, and I try to unpack this. Like, this is what I've spent the last decade since I went, fuck, that was a mistake. That's what I've spent the last decade trying to sort of reverse engineer and go, okay, what events, fucking, how did we get here? How the fuck did we get, how did I get swindled like this? And we all did, okay? And because I was just sitting there in this email group and I keep going back to that and I go, that's interesting that there was that illusion that if I sent, I was like, oh yeah, because they're across the world. Here's pictures of my baby. Here's this and that and the other. And, they went through that. Like one lost their baby to SIDS. Okay. One, some had twins, some had preemies, some had, but there was a cohort of sort of over time that was built with that list. And obviously it would arc up a bit and those communities would arc up, but it would self-regulate. Right. So, eventually it was funny because eventually like the community split in two, partially because of, like the Americans didn't like the Australians and the Canadians that were taking the piss out of them all the time. So they spun off and created their own little, stay at home mum like echo chamber. And that would happen then, even then with email. So they would go off and break off and create their own little group. Okay. So that would happen then. Now it just happens on social as well. Now that's actually algorithmic where you get affirmed rather than challenged. Okay. Because a lot of it wasn't, we never went out of our way to bully anyone, but we would just, early on I knew Americans lived in a bubble and they didn't like being challenged and they didn't like anything that was different from their default worldview. That's American hegemony at at work. That's what they do. Okay. They live in a bubble and disagreeing with somebody and their worldview is a threat to their identity because their identity is very much linked to quite shallow things like brands and things like that. Right. So I didn't realize, again, and obviously with the benefit of hindsight and maturity, I would have handled it with a bit more care and empathy because obviously I didn't realize that, this stuff was going on. Like I was just chill. I'm Australian. Nothing's that serious. Calm down. Fucking hell. Formula feed the kid. It'll stop crying and you'll get some sleep. Calm down. It'll grow up. Oh, my God. Fucking just log off. I had that feeling in 2001. Log off. Okay. I should have logged off more. But anyway. But then you had mummy forums, right, where they would start to have that public-private divide. So you'd have parts of the forum that were for general audience, okay, but then you'd have those private forums that were like cohort groups. So they'd have, when my son was being born in 2005, like the November 2005 babies. Was it? No. I was in the December one because it was... because he was born early, so it was December. Yeah, that's right. It was December 2005. So, and then you had that cohort, but it was on a forum. Okay, so at that point, the people who owned the forum would have your data. Okay, so there's a few websites that I would run where I have data that I've got secrets on people, right? I know their usernames. I know, like I've alluded to this before, where I have database dumps of my old websites sitting somewhere that I know who certain journalists are that were under pseudonyms, and I would never do that because that would be a breach of the trust of a user and an admin. So, but that's what happened was that eventually it started to be consolidated using this forum software. Again, we didn't think about it. It wasn't even a thought. We were just building a community that where people could hang out and go behind lock and key and sort of talk to each other and chat and just connect, right? And this was the thing with Facebook where he sold connection and he gave us a frictionless and easy way to do that. So that was the betrayal that Facebook have done here is massive, because again, people started sharing it to just their friends, started sharing it, people had control over where it was shared and all of this sort of stuff, where their stories were shared, photos of their kids, videos of their kids. And then suddenly newsfeed was there, and everyone is being announced to the world that they've posted photos of their kids, or they've posted this. And then Facebook got to decide whether the world saw your shit or not. And then what they did was they took it and started to train AI with it. And they took it and they updated their terms of service to say that they owned it and could do what they want with it. And then they bought Instagram without user consent. They bought Instagram and said, well, we own those photos now, because Instagram said, we own your photos. And you said, well, that's not the deal, cunt. And now they're using it to train AI with your child's faces without your consent. Okay, and that's what's happening. And so this is where, but anyway, so I'll go back. So, so the mummy blogging thing, it was just a, we weren't, it wasn't in, how sometimes it's like, this is how the law works as well, and most things, right? How society moves forward is that fuckwits move society forward, which is that you go, oh, well, here's the rule we all agree on, okay? I think we all know what we meant by the rule. And then some fuckwit comes in and goes, well, they find a loophole and they go, well, I'm going to do what I want, and and it's perfectly legal, and they fall in the gaps. And we go, well, that's not what we meant. And then we close the loophole, and then we close another loophole, and then we close another loophole. Like I've said before, 10% of fuckwits are the reason why most of the laws exist. Okay, fuckwits. Don't be a fuckwit. But that's what happened was that, until it's brought, most ordinary good faith people don't even think about it. And it's the same thing with sharing your kids' photos online. You don't think about it. Pre-2010, that is. I mean, after 2010, not having the foresight, because you knew what the deal was. I'd be generous and say 2012, okay? If you were sharing sort of past 2012, like certain things, but even I made mistakes. It was a gradual thing. It was a frog in cold water situation, right? But we didn't think of it. And so this is the thing where you've got these with retroactive, so there's this stuff where kids can sue like their parents for posting their stuff online, and I do hope that there would be, I think that when it's a criminal charge, there does need to be some threshold for intention and knowledge around what you're doing is wrong. And I think that I think that within the criminal framework is better rather than within the civil system. But again, it's, anyway, I'm digressing. So, but it was, I think, but what I went through, so I went through that, and that was just with my daughter. With my daughter was the person that I wrote most about and the one who was most mad at me. So make of that what you will. And this is a big part of it. And I would write about my son. And by the time that my daughter was at school, I played this role with other mothers at the school where I would make fun of the normal mothers, I guess, people who I just never I've never gotten along well with mummy groups. It's just too, I tend to not be very good in groups of women. It's just not my thing, because it just becomes bitchy and stuff. And, whether it's them or me, I don't know, but I think it's a combination of both. But I sort of went back into that sort of automatic mode where I would sort of snark about certain things. Okay, so with my daughter, because that was how I had positioned, that was my identity as a parent, was writing funny stuff, being snarky, pretending to be a bad mum and hating motherhood, because, you copy what you see around you. And it was funny, and people, like I said, people were in on the joke. Like I was a doting mother. I love my daughter, and I I was busy like any young mum, but for the most part, I was a good mum. Yeah, I didn't do anything particularly bad, but I would inflate that stuff and online and would write that sort of thing, right? And that slowly sort of took over my identity when she was at school, and I sort of positioned myself against those sort of stay-at-home mums again because I found their life. I was one of those cunts. I was just one of those, those hashtag child-free people that say horrible things about breeders and all that stuff. I was one of those, but I had a baby and I was like, I know that it annoys you, so I'm going to pretend that, I'm going to say the shit that I'm not supposed to say. Okay, that kind of stuff. And, like, again, part of it's being young, part of it's being a cunt, part of it's not, probably autism. But, I'm saying that as a product of the time. It's not necessarily, it's not, again, unless people being in on the joke is really only the, again, that's something that I've grappled with a lot, is that you got to walk a line between shutting up because of people who don't ever get any jokes and assuming everyone's in on the joke and not like reflecting on what you're saying. Like, that's a balance. That's a balancing act, right? And I've navigated that particularly, especially because of my style of humor, which is dark. It has come back to haunt me a lot. A lot of my archives are scrubbed now, but I would write about my marriage, and that was all fine until we actually went through some stuff. So when we and divorced, and then, we had to navigate that. And I had built influence on Twitter at that point. So this was around 2009, 2010. I was like a sort of big fucking influencer in my city, right? I was like considered number one, whatever the fuck, on the ladder of the clout ladder. Remember that thing? Clout and cred said I was like the top influencer in my city. And I was like, okay, whatever, who cares? Oh, wow, I'll get a free coffee. Cool. I never really cared about it, right? But it was like, obviously I had my blog, and it was like a lot more traffic than because I didn't keep stats either. So I didn't know that I was more, I didn't know my own influence. I didn't know my reach. I've never been aware of my reach. Okay. Then, so we went through divorce and it got ugly. Like, some of my divorce stuff spilled out onto Twitter. My ex-husband sort of put an army on me, and I actually deleted that Twitter account, right? That was actually one of the things that why my Twitter account today is small, because I deleted, a lot of the million followers, unless you're already famous or astroturf to shit or whatever, it's an incumbency thing. So if you got followers early, you accumulate followers sort of over the years. But I've had 3 Twitter accounts. Okay, so there's that. But my divorce, again, I've got to be, I'm cautious about speaking about this even now because out of respect, but I can gloss over it. But my divorce, it got ugly on Twitter. Like, he's incited a bunch of people against me who didn't like me because, again, haters, all that sort of stuff that you get haters as part of this persona. It's just one of those things. It was horrible. I even considered changing my name because my name is unique. And I realized that I needed to disappear because I was everywhere. And I remember, because I was just, I remember that having a conversation we were then separated. And I was like, well, I said to my husband, ex-husband at the time, husband at the time, but ex-husband now, like, what's the big deal? Like, I've seen this, like, if you watch these documentaries with the kid trying to explain to the parent how their sharing behavior affects them, you'll see the parent go, well, it's my story, it's my life, I'm just sharing what I want to share, what's it to do with you? And I hadn't really considered the impact either. Like, it was fine while we were married and while things were good and while he was in on the joke, okay? He was in on the joke. He knew it wasn't true. But then if I would say snarky things about my separation or my husband or my ex-husband or anything like that, the context changed. And I said, well, what's it to do with you? It's my story. It's my diary. It's my experience. It's my writing. It's creative. It's not real. And he goes, do you not? And again, this was and this is something that stuck with me. He goes, do you not realize that you're everywhere? Okay, we didn't have block buttons. We didn't have anything. You're everywhere because, everything was shared. We had mutual friends. We had all of these things, mutual follows, all that stuff. And I would constantly be everywhere. Okay. And I hadn't really thought of that. Right. I hadn't really even considered that maybe my words, which it wasn't all about me. It wasn't all about my words and my experience and what I thought about stuff. And also there were people who were no longer in on the joke and it wasn't funny anymore. And so I had to adapt and shift my behavior, and it took some time. So then what I did, guess what I did? I moved to Facebook, friends only. You shouldn't do that either. Okay. And that's where it's like, okay, it was not the smartest move. But again, I've scrubbed a lot of this stuff. I've still got the archives. I still keep them. I've got them as a, obviously as a WordPress export and that sort of stuff. But I'm humming and hawing about whether they will ever see the light of day again. Because, and that's why with the book, like I get writer's block with this stuff. I get held back because I go, look, there's stories. This is my story, but it affects other people. And to talk about the fact that, like, my ex-husband, this sort of stuff where it affected my relationship, and he actually turned. I mean, the other thing that he did was he turned around and took photos from Instagram out of context and threatened me, and put them in a binder. This is. And like a photo of a champagne glass on New Year's Eve as evidence that I have a problem. This is how nasty. This is why I never went to court. Anyway, I can't talk about that stuff. But I'm saying, like, he used a lot of my social media posts as weapons. Okay. Fine for his wife, but not for me, right? Anyway, but that stuff, then kids became involved. Okay, so my kids grew up and could read that stuff. They were not necessarily in on the joke. Okay, all my daughter saw was me telling embarrassing stories about her, as cute and funny as they are, and as cute and funny as the videos are. It wasn't mine to give. It wasn't mine to tell because it affected her. She wasn't in on the joke. Okay, there was another instance where this was an HTML blog. This was back in, this was fucking 1999 or something, where I made fun of my sister because her street name, because my sister's a bit of a bogan, and I made fun of the street name, and it was like, and I was making fun of like the fact that she lived in a like lower socioeconomic area. Joke's on me. She's richer than me now. She's in real estate. Joke's on me. But we don't talk. But I'm saying this affected her. Okay, it hurt her feelings, and I was trying to explain to her that it was just a creative exercise in snark and humor. And it was like, okay, I've had to learn where I punch and who, and I could get influenced by, and I built influence that way by being a bit of a cunt to people and not considering other people and unconsciously and not being self-conscious in my authentic creation and it's like, well, I was one of those people and I saw who I was and I didn't like it. So I stopped and my influence went away. Okay. And like, yeah, I again, there's things you can't exactly stop me from saying everything, but at the same time, I do hold back a lot now because of I've learned the hard way over these things that sharing stuff with your kids makes them angry at you. And this is one. So when I went viral in 2011 for something about my dating life. It was just a stupid thing, right? It was a human interest thing. It was like a day or two, right? I've written about that. But it was, and I hadn't really thought about how it looked for my ex and kids. It was just a humiliation thing for them because I joked about how I hadn't met my soulmate yet and like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, my kids saw that and it was funny. It was ridiculous. But I went viral for it. I went viral for something about my dating life. I hadn't divorced my husband at that point. We were still separated, okay? My kids were at home. I saw my kid, and I was, at the time I thought it was funny. But then I went back, I think 2013, I went looking for the Gizmodo article on the thing, okay? Because I was on like all of these things, Gizmodo, and they were snarking about me. And it was very interesting because I was like, well, there's an interesting dose of fucking karma. And it would hurt my feelings. Gizmodo were being snarky, okay? There was that, again, unless you were there and you saw the sort of Gawker media, that whole snark universe it was sort of amazing. It was, again, everyone was in on the joke that it wasn't necessarily real. And at some point, I know what happened to people. It attracted the bullies. It attracted people who liked being nasty. They didn't. It didn't. It was an art form in its own right. It was a way of expressing yourself in a creative fashion, where the targets were worthy targets, and but that whole. I mean, I could talk forever about the role that people like the things like Gawker and Perez Hilton played in the culture of bullying on the internet. But that's actually a chapter as well. Believe it or not. But that tone, that snark tone, there were those of us who didn't mean it, and it was just a fun thing and a fun creative exercise. But it changed who we were, and we sort of got to a crossroads where where we had to start looking at ourselves. We had to start seeing the impact of this on people around us. We had to start seeing the alienation from friends. We had to start seeing the results of that over time. And then there were those who didn't give a fuck about that. They were narcissists. They were bullies. They were cyber bullies. They loved to pile on. And, those people exist today still, who basically just bully with abandon and never actually reflect on the impact their behavior has on people and their influences now. Okay. But most of the people who are, half decent did reflect and did sort of over time back away from that kind of thing, because it hurt people and hurt their lives, and no amount of money was going to get that back, right? But so that thing where when I went viral in 2011, thank God it was only like Twitter viral 2011, and Twitter wasn't really a big thing then, and it was like I've been the main character. Thankfully, it wasn't 20 now main character. That would be life destroying. Okay. But that's why I won't join a pylon, because I've been the receiving end of the pylon. Okay. But so I went looking for the Gizmodo article. This is really tough, and but I went looking for the Gizmodo article for some reason. I can't remember what it was. And the comment section was still there, and I hadn't seen it. But what I did see was my daughter defending me in the comments. And when I went viral, she was only 10 years old. She went and took it upon herself to defend me in the comments on Gizmodo, saying that, she's not like that. She's a good mum. Because people were saying she's, all that sort of stuff. And that fucking hit me. That hit me. That winded me. It knocked the wind out of me. And that was actually, like some people would go, whoa, okay. And it, kind of hit me that, that this affected her. Okay. And I had never really, again, this is main character syndrome. You see it every day. But I think that because she was always very internet savvy. She was, and I thought it was cute. She was mostly contained, obviously, to the sandboxes and those sorts of things. I didn't let her have a Facebook account. I wasn't an idiot, right? But I taught them responsible internet use. But it was that thing where there's little cuts, little paper cuts over years. And you go, oh, my ex-husband saying, do you not understand what it's like to be, he was a cunt to me too. It wasn't healthy. But, like what it is like to be with someone who is, you're going through a divorce with them and they're everywhere. Okay, first of all. Right, and everyone hates you. Like, he felt that he was acting in self-defense because for whatever reason he felt that he was acting in self-defense. And inciting people against me was funny for him because I was the person that needed to be torn down, and there were plenty of people who wanted to do that. And it was the same thing but when I saw my daughter's name, a username defending her mum in the comments of Gizmodo, because the Gawker Network were nasty. They were nasty, right? Like anyone, and you see that. You see the people who defend the Gawker Network and Jezebel and those things. You'll see those people. They are vicious people and they don't care. They're like main character people, right? So it's like, I obviously I'm we've worked through a lot of this stuff now. He's settled down, he's chill. Like I can't talk about that, Stephen, obviously, for obvious reasons, because I have learned my lesson about talking about people But that's the position I find myself in, is because a lot of my stories involve and affect other people. And so the things I want to say, I can't necessarily say anymore because, I've learned the hard way that I don't like, if I have to choose between content and hurting people, I'll not hurt people, right? Or if they got to be in on the joke. Okay. But also there may be a point where that person that was in on the joke stops being in on the joke. And that happens a lot too, where, especially with my kind of personality, where, they're all in on the joke and they love me and they love me and they love me until I make a joke at their expense, and then they hate me. And then everything I say is, that's just, but that's part of being me, is saying the wrong thing and hurting feelings without meaning to, and people not being in on the joke until they're not, and then they turn on you. That's like a normal thing, right? Every comedian goes through that. Anyone who writes goes through that. But you've also got to check yourself there and go, okay, well, you really got to self-audit and be honest with yourself that it's not all the creative process either, that, you got to care about some things. You got to care about who you impact. If it impacts people directly, then you've really got to reflect on that, right? So anyway, so with that viral thing, I saw her affected by it. And and it just, that really, honestly, it should have been the impetus for me to shut everything down. Unfortunately, it wasn't. Because I was going through a divorce and I was going through all of these things, and I was high on my own fucking farts with Twitter and shit. Okay. And I know what it's like to get swept up in that shit because I was part of it, and it's nothing. It is nothing. It's not even remotely close to anything that resembles real life. Okay. Especially now, because a lot of it is just fake traffic, right? And the people who do get influence are the people who are least deserving of it. They're horrible people, okay? You should never, they're people who are seeking it. And anyone who's seeking fame shouldn't be famous. It's the same thing with anyone who's seeking power shouldn't be in power. It's people who lead don't necessarily have tweets. Oh, fuck, that's right, the Amal Clooney thing. I was like, yeah, wow, if only you said Amal Clooney hasn't even spoken out on Gaza. And I was like, okay, well, she was on the UN committee that recommended the charges with the ICC. But I suppose if, you consider doing something, tweeting 8 times a day about dead babies, then I suppose, yeah, she hasn't done much. Fuck me. It's like, oh my God, it's literally the only thing that anyone can do. She did. But apparently that's not enough. She didn't do anything. Fuck me. This is Twitter brain. Twitter brain. It breaks you. But that seeking of that influence, seeking power, seeking an audience. And there's a difference between seeking influence and influence, being an influencer, right, for fucking money and fame and this shallow shit, and sort of focusing on building a niche audience that's small and building a community. And the thing is that influencers don't have a community as such. Okay, if you're this is the battle, is that algorithms now are focused too heavily on. This is why I hate threads. I figured out why I hate threads, which was that Twitter organically attracted influencers. And those sort of vacuous pricks, but they had to sort of comply with the norms of the community. It wasn't built with the influencers in mind as a product. And Threads is very much oriented towards the influencers. If you could build a product that was influencer first and greed first and advertiser friendly first and all those sorts of things, you're going to strip away the magic and spontaneity that was Twitter. Okay. And that's the thing. That's why Threads is shit. Okay. Facebook at least has the illusion of some of that because Facebook started the same way as Twitter, which was more organic, more people connecting. And what happened was the advertisers came to the party and had to play by the users' rules, not the users playing by the rules of the advertisers. And that is why because something like Threads exists to completely ignore that history. Whereas Twitter, you still have elements of that. Now, is most of it. Like, again, that's the war that's going on, is normies versus people, users versus influencers, right? Influencers who don't give a shit about the users, they don't give a shit about the community. They're just colonizers who want to sell products and like build leads and all that sort of shit. Okay. But then you've got the people who use and love the platform, and they just want to hang out and they just want to, talk to people with similar experiences to them. They're building a community and a tribe. And that's the thing. I believe in building a community and a tribe, and every single one of my communities, partially my own fault, but they all get splintered and broken, and because influencers are crashing the party, and people end up, people get pissed off with me because of my personality and me being a shit stirrer. So if you're still here and you've been here since the beginning and I haven't pissed you off yet enough to fucking go away, oh well. It won't take long, but I do. I will eventually say something that pisses you off, because it's just, but again, every time that happens, I do self-audit and I do go, okay, is this something that I'm willing to compromise on? No. Are you overreacting? Yes. Yeah. So it's like, yeah. So anyway, because there is that balance with audience capture as well, where you don't want to be only saying what's going to make people happy and only saying what people are going to like. I'm here to challenge you and challenge your thinking. Like, I could easily just sit here and say, oh, well, I completely approve of everything that you're sharing about your child online. I completely approve. It's like, I know you do you. It's like, well, no, that child's going to grow up to hate you. That child's going to grow up to maybe even be in a position to sue you. And there are multiple ways in which that's going to be happening. Okay, it's already the case in France, and it's very, very quickly going to be the law here. So the Privacy Act is currently under review here. They're actually introducing I can't remember the name of it, but it's a child privacy specific bill that gives the child rights. The UN have declared that the child have the right to privacy and the right to all of those sorts of things, right? Yes, thank you, Matthew. So I run a masochism community without the whips and chains. We want to be pissed off. That's why we're here. Exactly, but in the right way. See, the problem is so I think about this a lot. I feel like my role is to help you channel your anger in the right places and look inward. I think too many people who do this stuff, I don't like scapegoating. I'm not into directing. And that's just from my own life experience, which is that it's easy. I've gone through all of these things. It's easy to blame others for our own horrible feelings, okay? Or somehow you go, well, my trauma is everything that I've been through. And it's like, that excuses it's like, well, no, I have done all of these things that I'm I'm not positioning myself as somebody who is being judgmental. Like, there's those people who are on, there's a great video, I love it. But, and this is the thing about these mental health professionals or experts say, or honestly, can I tell you now, the women that I've seen talking about sharenting, with their thing, is my first impulse is to go, well, fuck you judging women and talk, because one of my things is calling women bad mothers because they've made a decision that you are different to you, right? That's one of my things where I'll fight or flight and I'll go, fuck you. But so there are those again, the motivation, the intention and the motivation behind it matters, which is that I'm doing tough love. I think that I'm doing tough love here, which is that I was that person who said, fuck you, I can do what I want. This is my creation, my art. But I've also watched people who use their families as not just props on social media, but comedians who use their children as punchlines in their act, people who talk about their children when they're world famous. Fucking famously, Gwyneth Paltrow. Remember that when Gwyneth Paltrow posted a picture of her daughter, Apple? And Apple commented and said, Mum, I told you not to post this shit without my consent. And it's like, this is a pervasive problem. It's not sitting around judging somebody for making different choices to me. It is actually, and there's a great video. I'll edit the description because I saw it yesterday, where she actually shows some pretty horrific shit. At moments when you should be a present parent. And I've been guilty of this. I've been absolutely guilty of this, which is because I don't use TikTok. Right. So I don't really see the more horrific parts of things, right? I only see and I generally don't follow these types of accounts because it's just not my area, right? But when you actually see it all together, you see these influencers, people who've built influence out of their kids, but really, really inappropriate, like hypersexualized sharing. And the kids can't consent to this stuff. They are not able to consent. They're not even old enough to consent, right? And as soon as they are old enough to consent, they withdraw that consent. That's why teenagers will go, no. And I tried to, and with my daughter, I didn't respect it as much as I should have. I didn't think it was a problem. I rationalized a lot of it. But again, I've come out the other side, and I see it. I see where I fucked up, and I can't take it back. And it's like, okay, well, the things that you think are cute, talking about their illnesses and talking about their autism and talking about all of this sort of stuff. I'm even conscious about talking about my experiences having an autistic son because I'm aware that he can watch it. And it's not my story to tell. And I allude to it and I talk about it a little bit, but I could tell some stories, but he has to consent to it. I haven't actually ever, he doesn't care, but the only stuff that I talk about is stuff that he is fine with because he's got a life, he's got memories, he's got a story, and it's his story. And also, who the fuck, think about, we weren't thinking about digital footprints. Okay, we weren't thinking about HR tools. Imagine if my son was looking for a job and they somehow matched it with my talking about his social anxiety and all of these things all the day, or how he's sick every other month or whatever. And it's like, well, that some dipshit HR person, wow, cool. You see what real estate agents have done with fucking data? You see what dipshit HR people are going to do as well with the tools? But anyway, so I'm saying, think about your kid's digital footprint. And it's it's astonishing, again, not casting judgment. This is just an observation, which is that I understand why our generation might not have thought about it. In hindsight, yeah, it was really dumb. But to go now, right now, knowing what we know about social media, the data, the fact that, burn books are effectively built about people, okay, using these things. There's this thing on, I've been meaning to talk about this actually, these 404 Media talked about it as well, which was on Fiverr, that there's these people that are offering to just dox anyone for $20. And it's like, how much do you want to expose your children to this? And I go, I don't understand how, with all we know now, especially people who should know better, who are in the business of lecturing other people on how they parent and all of this sort of stuff, how they still just share the minutiae of their kids' day on Twitter. It's like, what the fuck? Anyway, that's a whole other thing. And it's not targeting anyone in particular. I'm saying it's just my experience that I stopped doing that a decade ago, and I was the worst one. I was a bad culprit. I was terrible. And I stopped because 10 years ago. And it's like, okay, knowing what we know now about algorithms and data, and that anyone can fucking land on it, that your child can be subjected to harassment, that, pedos are fucking stroking to it. But now AI, okay, AI, and it's come out in the last week, a couple of weeks, that not only is AI training on publicly available images, but stuff that you have put, so Google, if you use Google Photos, it's trained. Your photos are training Google's AI, and could be spat out at any time. Your fucking face. Your face is being used to train AI, even if it's a private account. Okay. If you've Flickr, if you've got a private Flickr account, this is the one because I've got an old Flickr thing that's I've downloaded the data, but that was a free website. That was just it was a photo gallery website. It's been training AI. By visual AI, okay? Your kids, All of your memories, everything has been trained to AI, whether it's password protected or not. Facebook, Instagram, Reels, TikTok, all of those things, everything that you produce is now training an AI to be able to hypothetically spit out again, you'd have to prompt it in a way, you'd have to program it in a way that could be done, but why not? Once you've got the training data, okay, this is why I can't fucking write. This is why I don't want to publish my book. This is why I'm caught. I mean, obviously the horse is bolted on video, so it's like, fuck it, I'll just do this. But again, I only do what the horse is bolted on it. And it's like, again, anyone who pretends that they knew that this was the deal and that they knew that this would come, but that this was happening, is full of shit. They are rewriting history, because I am somebody who is pretty pragmatic. I know the ins and outs of this stuff, and this is unacceptable, and this was an absolute bait and switch. But your kids' photos are being used to train AI, and the right application, again, if it's trained on the metadata where the kids' names are there, or the various other things, okay, you'll find that it's not. They're in there now. You can't untrain AI data. It's there now. It's there for life. And that was not the deal. And I thank God that I stopped doing this stuff and sharing all of this shit before it got too crazy. But if you're sharing it now, you're a fucking idiot. Like, what the hell are you doing sharing this stuff? Okay? Like, I worry about my words being used as weapons, right? Let alone my kids' faces. And here's another thing, like, I mentioned this, kids can't consent. Your role as a parent is to protect them from these things, not share their shit without their consent. Now, the legal thing is, it's interesting, actually. Copyright law seems to be an area where things are being fought. Okay, so it's I think in France and Italy and a few other places, I don't know about here in detail. I didn't look it up. It's too much. But in France and Italy, I believe that the person who is in the photograph owns the copyright to the photograph. Okay, they own rights. They can actually request it. So in France, you can get a 42,000 euro fine. Kids can actually sue their parents for these things, right? It's actually a crime. Now, that I want to make it very clear, I think, because a lot of people get sort of tinfoil about these like criminal things. You can only charge someone with an offence if it's in the law, with a crime, if it's actually a crime. And when they say that it's a crime, it means that it's a maximum penalty in the worst case scenario and all those sorts of things, okay? Usually with this type of thing, it would probably be a warning and a fine and all of those things, and then it scales up. So I think it's very important to clarify when we're talking about things like hate speech laws or criminalising certain things online, that gives the government the ability, the legal mandate. It means that democracy is working. I know it's a twisted thing to say, but it means that democracy is working in that it is people have the ability to make a complaint to the police in the most egregious cases and seek a resolution of that. So making it a crime, it doesn't mean that you should be locked. I'm advocating for you being locked up for sharing your children's photos. I'm saying that there should be a penalty, a criminal penalty for the most egregious abuses of that, such as there's there's examples where kids have repeatedly asked, the parent to take it down, or in the case of child influencers, which is just, oh my God, you think toddlers and tiaras is bad. Like there's oh my God, the rabbit hole you go down with these things when I couldn't even keep watching. I only saw a handful and I was just, my God, I had to reflect on my own, because I used to occasionally make jokes and stuff, and Mina would wear like a Juicy Couture t-shirt that's like, and I've had to rethink all of that because it was just funny in the moment, but in retrospect you go, fuck. But to do it now, I'm sorry, but to do it now, it's like, once you should know better by now, and it does mean that you have a problem. And I think that you're responsible for what you do once you are made aware of a problem and how a problem affects others. If you aren't aware of how you affect others, you get a little bit of leeway to remedy it. You get a chance to sort of make it right or try to adjust or learn. Okay, we're human beings, but at the same time, I think the expectation that especially like mothers that are like, again, I try to stay very clear away from judging mothers on their parenting. Okay, you don't know, whatever, but I don't understand why someone would film their child in distress and tag it in a way that that is going to get picked up and viral with the algorithm. So like, their children in distress. Like one of the examples I'll link to the video I saw actually, where she's just got this whole series of videos about her 13-year-old, like her kid's first period, and they're celebrating it and stuff. And it's like that, if that I was so embarrassed of like periods when I was 13. I was so like mortified of like that. I couldn't even say the word, right? I used to say Tim Tams for tampons because I was too shy, right? And I didn't want to buy them. My grandma would buy them for me. And like, you wouldn't think it now, obviously, because it's like no big deal now. But when I was that's a very, very, very vulnerable time for a young girl and young boys in particular as well. And posting those, but she was celebrating her daughter's first period. And it's just like, I'm sorry, but like, tag it. It's one thing to tag it if you've got a closed account that's got a couple of hundred people. Even then now, that's training AI. So be mindful of that. Okay. And that is also, if they know, facial recognition tech, all that stuff, you need to be anticipating the future, because even though we couldn't necessarily have anticipated the future back with the email list or the forums or whatever, that they would go and put the archives up, right, and make them publicly searchable. You can anticipate it now because we know that they're lying to us. We know they're the bad guys now. We know that tech lie. We know that the fucking terms of service lies. You know better. Okay, I'm telling you now, we know where it's going to go because they've done it before. When we had it, we thought that the tech guys were we thought that they were different. We didn't know better because it was a new thing, okay? But now you know because they have lied to us before with social and data. I can tell you now it is completely predictable that HR and real estate agents and all of those people, unless stopped, okay, will abuse people's data they will crawl these data sets for faces and facial recognition and all that sort of shit. Okay. Again, assuming that the Lord, allow, but again, like it's only about, you got to be able to enforce it anyway, whatever. But let's just put a hypothetical scenario where your child's photo has been used to train an AI with the metadata with their name and then matched with facial recognition technology and all that sort of stuff, and all their embarrassing shit is linked with them as a lawyer, and that gets them disbarred, for example, okay? Or somehow that, like you can, you just know that this was probably already happening, but I'm saying like facial recognition, that kind of tech exists now. It's not very good, but it's heading there. And the horse is bolted because you can't untrain AI data. It's in there. Okay, they have to destroy it and start over, and they're not going to do that. Like, even if you ask them to take it out, it has already learned the pattern, so you can't actually untrain it, if that makes sense. It's not the way that they work. It doesn't work that way, because once it's replicated, it doesn't work that way. It's like you're trying to, you put a drop of dye into a bucket of water. This is where, there we go. This is another reason. Other than being pissed off, this is another reason why people come to see me, is to watch me attempt an off-the-cuff analogy, and it failed miserably. But here we go. Glass of water, drop of red dye in the water, okay? That red dye goes into the AI. That is always there. It permeates all the way through, okay? You can't extract that out anymore, okay? I'm sure there could be some sophisticated, there's going to be some fuckwit, some sophisticated mechanism to extract it, but I doubt, you understand the metaphor. And it's like, that wasn't the deal. That wasn't it. We were supposed to, adults need to be able to consent to this, not children. You need to be mindful of this stuff. Okay. Now, what I do is, you may notice, is that I talk a lot of shit. What I do is I go with the flood it with shit strategy. I've done that since 2011, is that I just give, which is funny. That's why when people sort of contact me and go, oh, I feel like you don't know me. And people tell us like, which part is it that you think you know about me? Because I sort of give, I change my mind and I jump around and I whatever. And like part of that is just who I am. I change my mind, contradict myself and, make shit up and do stuff and have fun or whatever. But that also has a protective aspect to it, which is that I confuse all of the data and stuff, right? So they get, you can't really actually confuse behavior, but, like a lot of the stuff I put out there is partial truth at best, right? It's not so much lies, it's just more I leave stuff out, right? People are surprised to know I've got kids, especially adult kids. Unless you've known me for a long time, you know that I've got adult kids. I when I talk about my husband, it's usually just to make a stupid joke or like whatever, right? It's and he has, and I have his consent. Same thing with my kids. If I talk about my kids, it's like in the abstract, right? Even talking about like my relationship with my daughter has been weaponized against me by an AI bot. Like if you've been on this channel for a while, a few years ago, there was an AI bot that actually started talking about my relationship with my daughter and started to manipulate me. I often wonder if Russell Brand was a victim to one of those bots because it was Jesus bot, right? That's one of my jokes about Jesus bot, where it took some of my information and started feeding it to me on my chats. I should show that clip actually. Started showing it to me on my chats and said basically, my daughter would forgive me and stuff like that if I found Jesus and shit like that. And it was like obviously a bot, but some people would fall victim to that. I wonder if Russell Brand has. That'd be interesting. But those bots exist. Okay. And they take your data and they start to manipulate you using an AI, right? And it's all of the stuff that I've talked about for years and years and years about platform manipulation and how trivial it is to actually manipulate things if you really, really want to. And you don't even need a huge amount of skills or the OpenAI's API access and those sorts of things, and the LLMs in particular, that being open to the public has opened a can of worms that I think people really aren't prepared for. That said, none of it is new. Most of it has been known and been around for many, many years. It's just that OpenAI sort of commercialized it and brought it to the mainstream. It's like MySpace and Facebook didn't invent the idea of like online collaboration or online communities or anything like that. They just made it more accessible to a wider range of people. And it's the same thing that's happened with AI, is that, the technology's been around for since Eliza, since the 70s. It's only compute power that's really, really expanded. It's not really the technology itself. It's the actual physical limitations of the processors and GPUs, right? But anyway, there's a digression. But I'm just saying, I'm not saying this to judge people per se. I'm just saying it to warn people that I've been through this. And also one thing I have observed, and again, there's a few reasons for this, which is as soon as I stopped airing dirty laundry, and as soon as I stopped with the drama, and as soon as I stopped oversharing, as soon as I actually grew healthy boundaries around a lot of this stuff, my influence went away. And, I was thinking of writing about this, where I don't know whether it's the name, I think it's the name of a chapter of a book, but it's like we're all lolcows now, right? Lolcows is this taken to its sort of pathological extreme, right? But I think that everyone needs to think about the lolcow, okay? I'm not influential enough to be a lolcow, but I could have been, because there was a point where I was not, I was only focused on my own creative expression. I was only focused on myself. I was never focused on traffic or a big audience. it's been more inward than that, more narcissistic than that, dare I say, which is I've never really sought out an audience or fame because I've got stage fright and I'm shy and all of that sort of stuff. If anything, I avoid those types of things out of fear, and I should be doing more speaking stuff and those sorts of things. But, and I don't take myself too seriously, but one thing I do take seriously is the craft. Okay, so if you start, and this is one of those things where I think I have fallen victim to it as well, is that I self-bullshit and I rationalize these things as art and as part of my process. And I think that a lot of comedians fall into that trap where that's why they're often very lonely people, is because they use people around them for material. And it's not really their story to say, or it's, again, I'm saying there's a reason why they struggle with relationships. It's not because people don't see, this is the trap. Oh, people just don't get comedy. Well, it's partially that, yes, but it's also the fact that people don't like being used as props for your art. Like being a muse for people is tremendously. I tend to be a muse, but I tend to, I've been the muse and the creator. Okay. Always being the muse is not fun either, because you start to be seen as not a full creative or person in your own right. You start being seen as a tool for other people and their art. And it's like, but you tend to rationalize, well, this is my process. This is my art. Other people are props. And this is exactly the tech bro AI. You see these AI guys where they're like, oh no, artists are just, I'm the artist because I'm writing the prompt. You are a mere tool. And it's like, well, it's funny that, because artists have that view of other people as well often, right? Just saying, they use other people as props for their craft. And it's like, okay, well, again, at least I'm saying be very careful about accusing tech bros and AI bros of exploitation. If you are someone who shares other people's stories and other people's work and stuff, I'm just saying, like, think about, again, you can blame other people, but there's a reason why people get upset. When I get upset about something, I go, am I upset at them or am I upset at me? Because I am aware of the fact that projection is a thing. I'm aware that I rationalize and I'm trying to grow as a person. I try to do that. It doesn't work much, but I try. But I do worry about this handing over of your most. I can't believe people would, again, when I say I can't believe it, it is done without judgment, because motherhood is hard, parenting is hard, it's boring. There's lots of reasons why people share online. A lot of the time it's because they don't know what going viral is like and how it affects people. They haven't lived through it, so they don't know. I know what it's like, okay? And I've lived through it and I made the decision to stop. Then you've got, obviously, your influencers with, 1 million followers or whatever who are humiliating their children in public routinely. And I think, well, okay, good for you. I hope your children feel the way about you that my daughter feels about me, okay? Because I did a whole lot less. Anyway, but it's just, But yeah, I mean, I don't understand that part. And that's the part I don't understand. Why you would share your children's suffering and then add hashtags with the intention to go viral, especially if you've already gone viral and you know how horrible it is. It's awful. Okay. Now, again, narcissists, all the worst people are incentivized in these things, right? But the second that I stopped doing that, my influence went away. Do you want to be a lol cow? Do you want your kid? More importantly, do you want your kid to be a lol cow? Do you want your kid to be to be a meme for the rest of their lives at their most vulnerable moment? Okay, like there's there's heaps of interviews with kids that were memes, like in the early internet, who grew up and they monetized it and they're okay and they can see the joke because obviously it worked out well for them and their family, because it was that kid. When the far right in the US used that success kid thing, and the mother wrote and said, no, we do not endorse this, like blah, blah, blah. They exercised that right. But, there's the the kid who's like some of them made good money out of it and all that sort of stuff. And again, I'm not saying that's not possible, but it's rare. There are people who have a negative side effect of that. And that, you know, like this is why that hook to a girl, right? It's like, okay, good. She's an adult. Good on her. Monetize it. Americans are stupid. If you can monetize that shit, go for it. Okay. But if it's a child, like I've got to say, okay, the last 5 years, I don't want to be a Zoom. I've been writing about this. This is very much linked to how I feel about Gen Z. Stop dunking on Gen Z. They've lived through a pandemic where they've watched their adults, every adult around them lose their fucking minds. They've been locked up in their houses. They have been, radicalized. And people are blaming social media. It's the one place where they can actually hang out and connect with their friends. That has its dangers. They're living basically in a fucking never-ending trauma feed 24/7 with war and destruction. They're seeing the world around them. They're worried about climate change. They're worried about all of this stuff. Their parents are working. They don't have time for them. Their parents are stuck to their phones. And if they're lucky, and in the worst case scenario, their parents are humiliating them on TikTok to millions of people. They can't consent to it. And also, every famous person they've ever met is fucking spurging out over trans people or fucking letting them down or whatever. Okay, everyone they look to. What role models can we give children? If their parents, like I know what it's like when you are a kid and every adult around you it lets you down as a role model. Like it's hard. You have to build yourself from scratch. And, again, I used to work in child protection, so I see it from that through, there's protective behaviours lenses and stuff like that. I see it through the kids' eyes. That's what I do. But that's my impulse, right? But at the same time, it's like, think about the kid. They've gone through, especially now, I can't believe that we can go through what we've been through in the last 5 years as a society and then somehow be blaming the kids rather than blaming us and millennials in particular. Blaming, like I saw that millennials, like, you don't understand that the whole economy has been shit since 2008 and it's like, yeah, okay. What happened in 2008? I don't know, social media. You're a social media marketer. Your career didn't exist. You had lots of opportunities and you fucked it like a boomer fucks it. Stop blaming Gen Z. Millennials fucked it. Anyway, but it's like, I was in Gen X, so I was a bit, but I was a different, again, I do separate those cohorts. And again, that could just be rationalizing, but I'm saying we didn't know that this would happen. Millennials didn't want to know that this was happening. And, again, I'm generalizing and I'm fading too. I need to piss in a minute, but it's, the law is heading this way, just so you know. And the reason why I know the law's heading this way, do you know why? Because I'm going to make it head that way as soon as I can, because it should, right? In France, you can sue your parents for not taking it down. Oh, yeah, that's right. I was saying about that, which is, making something a crime with a maximum sentence doesn't mean you're going to get the maximum sentence. It just gives the government, it puts a cap on, a lot of this stuff. You'll have access to warnings, process, you'll get a fine, you'll get counselling. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. If you're doing the justice system right, which most are, it just means that there will be some early intervention. It means there'll be funding around it. It means that there's programs, all of those sorts of things. It's not just, they're criminalising speech. It's like, don't be an idiot. It's like, no, in the most egregious examples where you refuse to stop, this is the same thing in Europe, right? The Netherlands one is a good example of that. Now, and they will try their luck. Police, you get on the wrong side of the wrong cop on the wrong day, and, they'll make an example of you and there'll be test cases. But for the most part, it's when, you're asked to take it down and you say no. And then you're asked to take it down again and you say no. And then you maliciously share it to more people because they said not to do it, those sorts of things. And then you can show, you get what I'm saying? It's like there's degrees to all of these things. And like the role that these laws play is that for the most part, it's just a law to rally around, fund, give a mandate, give the authority to plug up the loopholes that exist. Okay, which is, this one is a big loophole, which is the people that are supposed to be protecting these toddlers from predators on the internet are spoon feeding it to them for clicks, likes, and to sell some fucking discount codes. Like, what the fuck? Those kids need recourse, okay? So it's not so much about criminalising the internet, it's about protecting and ensuring that those children have recourse in, the case of like these toddlers and tiaras things, right? No one's outlawing beauty pageants, okay? But we should be outlawing the abuse and the all of, you get what I'm saying? It's about degrees and extremes, okay? And intent. When something is a crime, you have to prove intent. Okay, that's malicious, not even malicious intent. You can have negligence, but I'm just saying, generally, you have to prove intent or at least reasonable foresight. And in this case, if you don't have reasonable foresight that sharing this shit online is training an AI to be weaponized against your child so that they will be unemployable, unable to fucking move freely and be stripped of every fucking thing, then I don't know I can't say anything else. But sure, okay, like, anyway, whatever. Continue accusing people of not doing anything on Twitter. Twitter is where people go to not do anything. So nobody on Twitter should talk about people not doing anything. The little grinning girl meme, can't stand seeing it now. Yeah, the thing is when I think that this is just, again, it's not, there's no blame. It's not, I'm not blaming because again, if it was sort of pre-2012, let's be generous and say pre-2012, when there was no money in it, it was unlikely to be seen. Okay. So first of all, there was no money in it. The incentives were not there for psychopaths. Okay. It was unlikely to go viral. It was actually such a rare thing. Okay, to actually go viral. It just happened to it was a phenomenon that we were building parachutes on the way up, so to speak. We were building those things on the way up and down, right? We were figuring out as we went along, right? Again, I've been part of these governance discussions, like policy, social media policies, into all this stuff for fucking years. We were making it up as we went along. They're doing it with AI now. Universities are making all these rules up and they change all the time. That's why you kind of go, okay, all right, I understand why you've got to do this. And, it's the legal board is, okay, I get it. All right, cool. Okay. All right. I'll sign up for that invigilated exam, even though I don't like it. But that's because the legal board are requesting it for them to keep their accreditation and their hands are tied. You go, okay, I understand that. All right. All right. Until we figure out something else. Okay, then. The university can't really be fighting the legal board at the moment, right? You see what I'm saying? You kind of got to be, I understand, it's like you got to be more, again, comes back to being charitable and reasonable and understanding that pre-2012, if you posted an image, I think I think it should be a reasonable defense. So if we're talking about the law, and I'm just making shit up now, but it should be at least a mitigating factor. I think that the case law will probably go in this direction. Okay, so let's hypothetically say there's a crime to share your children's photos online, and the children have an unlimited lifelong right, hypothetically, lifelong right to sue you for the end result of that. So let's go for the most YouTube-friendly, egregious example. So let's say you shared photos of your daughter on Flickr in 2008. Okay. And those photos were used to train an AI. And when she was an adult, the metadata had actually been caught up by the training, by the algorithm, and those photos resurfaced and were used in some sort of pedophilic shit. Okay, whatever. Okay. So let's say that's a deep fake, but that is that child and can be attributed to that child and misattributed to that child. Okay. Again, yeah. So Matthew's mentioning a really good use case. So I'm going with hypotheticals. Just more of a thought experiment. But there's many examples of kids who who really have been memes, and they have not come out of it very well. Okay, but we were thinking about it. But the parents, but they posted it under a different set of terms and conditions. Again, they changed the rules. The terms and conditions, it doesn't give them the right to do whatever the fuck they want and do whatever harm they want just because you signed it in 2008. Okay, so let's use Flickr as an example. Flickr keeps sending me emails saying I'm over my quota and fucking. It's like, yeah, that wasn't the deal when I uploaded them. Stop nagging me. But if those images are used to create harmful material, okay, of my kids or whatever, those kids have the ability, and they take me to court, right, for damages. It should be. Again, reasonable foreseeability will be a test, right, and the distance from the harm, all that sort of stuff, right, but. I think it should be at least somewhat of a defense that you didn't know, and it wasn't actual negligence because you didn't know. It wasn't foreseeable that you would end up there. Okay. You'd have a much thinner case now with TikTok and an algorithm where you have tagged hashtag Nike, hashtag viral videos, hashtag funny with your kid, and their first period. Right, that threshold is well and truly crossed, and I think you should be thinking about that because once it's a crime, you're probably committing a crime. Again, crimes can't be retroactive, but I'm just saying, right? Well, mostly. This is an interesting area of law, and I'm probably going to spurg out and be nerdy, so I won't bore you with it. But there are principles around these things where. Crimes can't be retrospective. Okay, so that's going to be an interesting thing because children can sue for something that was legal at the time and didn't have it's going to be there's a reason why I'm training. It's going to be an interesting fucking area, not so much in the regulatory side, but in case law, like the case by case shit. It's going to be some major legal questions that I don't know where it's going to go because you're going to have to overturn some certain things, right? So in the instance of a child, obviously there's a different threshold for negligence, and you have a higher duty, arguably a higher duty of care for a child as you would for another adult, for example. You should show more care with a child, but then in the interest, if you make it a criminal offence, most crimes can't be retroactive. But if you make it civil, then the burden of proof is lower, and so it's interesting. Anyway, I've digressed. So anyway, I'm coming up on 2 hours, and that's probably way too long. It's the longest I've done for a while, and the lighting looks like shit, but that's okay. Anyway, but yeah, I think. I don't know if I was coherent in my story. I'm a better writer than I am. I wandered off on tangents and all that sort of shit. But I think it is worth thinking about what you're sharing, why, and to who. And again, this is the problem, which is that I do think about this stuff, and so I don't share stuff. So people think that I can't share stuff. It's like, no, I can't. Why would I write a book? When the only place that I can buy a book sell a book is flooded with AI bullshit right now, and you can't even get it's AstroTurf, they fake reviews and AI generated books on Amazon. That's the only, you can't do anything. What's the point in writing a book unless I can go through a traditional publisher? Which they won't do, and they won't give first-time authors advances and all those sorts of things that, you kind of need. So it's like either self-publish on a platform riddled with shit and slop, or go to a traditional publisher where the gatekeeping is high. And well, why am I going to write a book then? Unless somehow Patreon, somehow my algorithm goes, hey, Taya, you can have more than 5 fucking likes or more than 5 people see your shit. Suddenly that gets cleared by all of the fucking bots and troll farms and shit that over the years I've gathered up on this account. Suddenly I can actually promote myself enough to have because initially the goal was that I would release a chapter by chapter on Patreon, but I just wasn't getting enough patrons to be able to do it. And I felt like I wasn't delivering, and now I'm still definitely not delivering on Patreon. And I'm fixing that. It's coming, but it's just, writing a book is a lot of work, and it's a big amount of effort. And the fact that people, if you don't think it's a lot of work, then you're not taking it seriously, and you're probably not very good at it, because it's a lot of work, and to do it properly is hard. Okay. And if you can just stop and write a book full time, please stop telling me I should write a book. I know. I've got one ready to go almost, and I haven't released it because of all of these problems. So if you've got an idea, say, here's how I can help you release the book, not you should write a book. I've written one. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I know. I should have written 3 by now, but I can't because everything keeps moving around me, and I don't want to risk, because I actually know what I'm talking about, and I know the risks of all of these things, and I am cautious about putting stuff out in the world that affects other people. Okay. So anyway, that's the paradox we live in, where the whole internet went from empowerment and agency and merit to exploitation at every fucking level. So for exploitation of other people for stories that then, where the author is not even paid appropriately for that exploitation, then the tech companies then take data that's not theirs for AI bros to exploit people in ways that, using information that's not theirs, with tech that's not theirs, with stories that aren't theirs, with data that's not theirs, and go right back to the beginning where the exploitation is re-victimizing the people that were originally exploited in the first place. So it's a great fucking system that you've built there, fellas. Well done. That was exactly what we had in mind when we were just wanting to talk to people around the world. Motherfuckers. The thing that made me the angriest was the even your private photos are training the AI. Right. Now, obviously there's large amounts of data, so it's unlikely, but you just don't know what it's going to spit out. You don't know. The right prompt, they help, it's like, it's not right. How we navigate this, I don't have answers. I make it my full-time effort to try and navigate and figure this out and map it. And it looks like a crazy board. You've seen my crazy board. It looks like a fucking crazy board. Even I don't even begin to have answers to this problem. So anyone who thinks they know, anyone who's if anyone should know, it's me, because I've lived it and I know all about it, and I make it my full-time job to know, and I'm trying to figure out solutions, and I'm training as a lawyer, and I've been in tech, and I'm a mum, and I've made all the mistakes, and I've navigated. If I don't know, then some fuckwit like Tim Pool definitely doesn't fucking know anything. Anyway, I don't know why I said Tim Pool. He's an idiot anyway. But I'm just saying, all of these fucking culture wars people who think they know, this stuff, they don't know. They're saying they know, but they don't. If I don't know, then you can take that to the bank, because I know pretty much everything about this fucking business and the problems that we're facing. And I've made it my business to know and my whole life to know, and I still fucking don't. Where's your book, Taya? I don't know. I answered that. Get me a publisher. Introduce me. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. I love you. I'm going to go. I need to piss. Thank you for your precious last seconds. Thank you for your, So they are. So they're scraping. So, but it's not even that they're scraping it per se. Just by you using that tool, okay, the features that they have. So I love my iPhone, right? The Photos app, and I use Google Photos to back them up because my fucking iCloud costs a fortune, and that's another hoodwink. I'll just upload to the iCloud, shall I? I'll back up my photos. Everything's full. Pay us $50. It's like, no, I spent $2,000 on the phone. Shut the fuck up. So I back it up to Google Photos. But the AI, what it uses to search, the tools, all of those cool features, that needs to be trained. It needs to go into that master database. But again, it's like you are trained. The way that it functions is that, like, I don't know how to build tech. It's one of those things where we were like, well, trust us, bro. I would trust you if you hadn't let us down and abused us before. And I think that that's the thing, is that a lot of the gaslighting around tech with this stuff is that, do you want cool shit? We have to do the evil shit to give you the cool shit. I go, well, I want the cool shit without evil shit, or some assurances that you're trustworthy, and the times that you have, was a fuck up, not an intention on your part, or that you are genuinely trying to do the right thing, not just, again, it's the intention behind it that matters. It's not that I'm not one of those people that is like reject tech, get a dumb phone, as tempting as it is, get a dumb phone, don't go on the cloud. It's not realistic. The onus, the responsibility lies on AI companies, on tech companies, to treat their users with respect and gather their consent, get consent. Express consent, not implied consent, not write terms and conditions that are slippery and have changed 50 times in 10 years that say we own what you fucking produce and do what you want, cunt. And if you do have a problem with it, you're forced to come to court in California. That's not building trust. Why would we trust you? You can't have it both ways. I'm quite cool with you doing what's necessary to give us the cool shit. But you got to do the right thing. And this is where, it's like, fuck me. You've got no argument. If you say they need to do that to do the cool shit, it's like, well, you don't need to be you don't need to be evil. You don't need to be exploitative, and you don't need to put those sneaky clauses and sneaky fucking things in your terms of service that give users no recourse. That's predatory. That's the exploitative part. It's the slippery bullshit from the corporate lawyers that pisses me off. It's not the tech. And don't gaslight people and tell them that they consented to it, because they fucking didn't. Because I was there. As I've said, I was there. I have lived this. Okay, I've navigated it and come out the other side. And I still can't believe that I'm seeing mothers who are in their 40s sharing their fucking, like, toddler shit on Twitter. Like, what the fuck? It's insane. And it's not even about their privacy or them being embarrassed or their footprint. Just for security purposes. There's people that are building databases about their first pet. So what's their first pet's name? What's this? What's their mother's maiden name? If you're sharing all of that, security questions are fucked, aren't they? What school did you go to? I can't believe people post pictures of their kids in their school uniform. What the fuck? I mean, that could be understood. I'm being generous, 2012, okay? Before this bait and switch happened. But now? Like, what the fuck? You know better. And deep down you know better. Because if you didn't know better, you wouldn't be you wouldn't be doing it. If you weren't trying to go viral or weren't willing to trade your child's safety and future for likes, which is what that is, okay, you need to look at yourself and go deep down and go, you know what why am I doing this? Because I went through that. The reason I had shared all that shit was because I was wanting validation, and I was lonely, and I didn't fit in with other mothers. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And I thought that wearing this uniform of snarky mum, anti-mum shit was cool, until I grew up, and my daughter grew up, and my son grew up, and all those, and she grew up to resent me for all of it. And I had to face it and go, you know what? Fuck. If I had my time again, I wouldn't have done that. And it was it's like, fuck, you get one shot as a parent. Why would you do this to your child? And again, I have the benefit of hindsight. And it was a product of the time. And again, it's not an excuse, but it was a product of the time. There was the incentive, the monetary incentives weren't there. I wasn't looking at metrics. I didn't know that people were watching, because I assumed that it was only my little bubble on the internet. I wasn't going out of my way. I wasn't I wasn't trying to get on wasn't running a full page ad in the paper saying, come to my website and look at my kids. Like it was something that wasn't discoverable. And it wasn't training AIs, and it wasn't, all of this sort of, it wasn't there. Social media wasn't there. And even early social media use, right? There was a social contract that was broken by tech companies, so I could give you a little bit of leeway there. And again, I'm not in the position to judge. I'm just saying, I think that again, and also I'm empathetic to those who are isolated and in COVID, post-COVID, who have succumbed to these algorithms and found, built brands or built these things out of fear, because they were lonely and disconnected. Like, I feel sorry for influencers who feel so disconnected from their children and disconnected from the people around them that they feel like that 500,000 views on TikTok is way more important than the child that is in front of them that's going to grow up, because they're young. They're not young for long, right? So anyway, that makes me feel very sad. Not for me, but for those kids, but they're for their parents, because I at least was present, even though it was as present. I was, I still wasn't as present as, no one's as present as they wished. My guilt around parenting is around how much I worked. So I was always working. And because I bought that merit shit hook, line and sinker, thinking that if I just worked harder, worked more, took on more clients, did more stuff, smiled, bent myself the right way, that eventually there'd be something at the end of it. But I didn't realize that tech was already a club for people who were like this, exploitative and willing to just go along with this big lie that we have agency and choice, and that we consent, and that we can express ourselves and connect without there being a big flip side. And that flip side is becoming more and more apparent. And I'm glad that I got out early, as much as it frustrates me that I'm obviously limited and I can't get much reach and all that sort of stuff. At least I get reach on my own terms, and I'm happy with that. Don't be a lol cow. We're all lol cows like now, right? Don't be one. But, I try to be less of one. Obviously, I'll say stuff. Usually the shit that I'm saying is to confuse the algorithm, because I feel like if I feel I've given I watch my ads. If I see ads or whatever and I watch what I get, and if I feel like they're too accurate, I'll say something that fucks it up. But I'm just saying, but I do this stuff on my terms. And even if it, obviously I appreciate those who do watch, and I appreciate those who do support me and all that sort of stuff. It's never expected. It can be frustrating because I do know the landscape that we're in, which is that, the whole tech content landscape is built around people who are willing to throw their children, their partners, their relationships, their integrity, their pride, everything under the bus for some likes and a discount code for fucking BetterHelp. It's like, I don't want to live like that. And if I have to choose, and that ultimately that's the thing, is that if I have to choose between a life chasing clout in order to monetize and make this a sustainable thing and not, I choose not. I will do it on my own terms. It's just, I wish that the system was different. I wish that we could create, I wish that we could go back and create those original communities where people could build a community without it being, chucked up as an archive for all to see without our consent and our permission. I'm deeply disturbed by that, but also social media has a good part of it, which is the discoverability, but that's gone too. So where the fuck do people find people, connect with them to build their community in the first place? But then how do you stop those communities from becoming a bubble of self-validating? These are big problems. No one problem can be solved by one person. These are hundreds and thousands of experts trying to solve all of these problems. They're big problems. Just trying to figure out how to not create filter bubbles and radicalized communities is very difficult, right? You see, it's again, a lot of these are societal problems, but they're societal problems on steroids, and a lot of it does come back down to the incentives, the capitalist structure, the for-profit motives of the internet and those sorts of things. The fact that the internet is controlled by 5 to 10 people now, ultimately, is the same 4 hedge funds basically farming us for profit when they're buying up shares in every tech company, and also the data companies from the tech companies, and building up these databases. It's these shadow companies of data that are the most concerning, because those are the guys that are basically, they're the bad guys. The tech guys aren't. You think the tech guys are psycho? Fucking look at the hedge fund guys that are like investing in all of this stuff. It's evil shit, man. And I don't know how to fix it, because I'm just me. But I am still just me, little old me, nobody. I'm asking you to think about this stuff, and asking you to at least think about your own role in it, and support people, and don't stop supporting people who play that game. Stop supporting people who exploit people for a few clicks. Stop just mindlessly clicking on things that you agree with that are at the expense of someone else. Think about who's impacted by brigading. So if someone's quote tweeting or, piling on in a comment, think about your impact. Think about, I do that. I'm not perfect. Every so often I'll make a snarky thing, but it's very rare to see that. You'll notice that and it affects my clout, right? Twitter, you don't, when you get Premium Plus, you don't get additional reach on original tweets. You get reply boosts. So it literally incentivizes you you'll be the top of the reply, okay, which is basically, if you're someone like me, who I don't use replies because I know what it feels like to be, I turn my replies off for a start, but also I know what it feels like to be ratioed, right? Before ratio was a thing, I was just harassed, and that was before there were even any laws or any recourse. I've talked about that before, where I had to get an AVO, and the police said, just turn off your computer. That was their answer to death threats. I've been through all that too. And thankfully none of that has ever really touched my children, other than me seeing my daughter defending me in a comment section on Gizmodo. Like, what the fuck? That really, that was a lightning bolt for me with her. Again, that was 1,000 paper cuts for her, but I wouldn't forgive me either. Oh, anyway, don't do it. I'm going to go. I love you. I got to piss. Oh, hang on. I haven't done the... Speaking of appropriate boundaries online, thing is, it's me doing it. I consent to it. And it's an obvious joke. It's not someone else. They're not at someone else's expense. Unless you've got a little dick that doesn't have soda water in it, and then you'd be very offended. Anyway, I'm going to go. Take care. I'll be back soon. Yeah. Sorry for making it weird at the end. But, this stuff, this is what happens, and it's going to happen. And thankfully, I thank God every day that she doesn't sue me for telling her story, because it's not mine to tell. And soon the law will agree. So clean it up. I'm thinking of actually going and deleting everything now. Not that the horse is bolted. So it's like, ugh, I don't share anything new. Commit today to not sharing anything new without anyone. Ask consent of your child. Just ask them, is it okay if I do this? Do you agree? And if they're under 13, don't, even then they can't really consent, and you need to be better than that. Okay. Same with your spouse. Because this is another thing, are you sitting there mocking? There's things that I talk about with Paul, and I just make fun of him, like the way he reacts to farts. That's a funny thing. Sorry, I knocked the mic and the battery fell by having a battery. That's why having a powered mic is not good. I need to get a new mic. Anyway, it fell out. I think that's my cue to go. But, think about how I've said some horrible shit about people now. There's things I wish I'd said and I want to say, and I am holding back till certain people die. I'll wait till they're dead. And even then, I don't want to hurt anyone, So, but again, you gotta navigate this stuff. And comedians understand this. Good comedians understand that some things are just off limits. Selfish and bad ones don't. Anyway, I'm going to go. I'm holding the microphone in my hand, hoping it doesn't fuck up. So I think that's my sign. Anyway, take care. I'll be back. I don't know when. Soon. Okay. I'm just trying to get the lighting and everything sorted, and then, yeah, it's all good. Okay. Anyway, bye.